Joining me today is Dr. Lucas MacMillan, naturopathic physician and clinic director of the Delbrook Integrated Medical Centre. Dr. MacMillan is back on the show to talk about hormonal harmony, debunking myths, and boosting athletic performance. Welcome back, Dr. MacMillan.
Hello and good morning, Christine. This might be the earliest podcast you and I have ever had, so it's great to chat again, and great to chat in the morning. Getting off to a bit of an earlier start.
Yes, and what an important topic. And here we are again. We talked about hormones in a past episode, but I want to revisit for our listeners. And the first question is, what are hormones and what do they affect in the body?
Yeah, it's a good big question. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what they are, what this actually means. So essentially, hormones are one of the main communicators that your body naturally uses to turn different functions up or down. Like everything, almost everything that we are, if it is not a quick movement like flexing your arm or taking a step or something that instantly changes, very, very likely it's hormone controlled. So, for example, blood sugar levels can go up, it can go down quite significantly based on hormones alone. Your metabolism, like how hot or cold you are, how energetic you feel, is very much hormonally controlled. All different aspects of sexual function, athletic factors such as how well you recover, your likelihood to put on muscle mass, your likelihood of gaining or losing fat. There's huge effects based on hormones in your body, and it can very much be a benefit. It can be a wind at your back helping to push you forward, or it can be that anger that you're dragging behind you that's really slowing you down and getting in the way of your goals. It's an absolutely huge, powerful part of who and what you are.
Yes, and if you want to be a healthy athlete, then listen in on this topic, which is really important. You know, hormones can affect you in your daily life, but do hormones really have compared with healthy food choices and lifestyle? Like how much power do hormones really have, in other words?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a good way to look at it. I think a good baseline should always be I should move. I mean, exercise and lifting weights and the classic exercises are great, but movement in general is a really fantastic piece to always have there, no matter what else we're talking about. And having a half decent dietary intake is always going to be another component that we can't really take away. The same with sleep, the same with a number of other things. So if we compare the two, if we look at the effects of hormones and the effects of all these things, there is a ton of overlap. There's places where if your hormones are working with you, it's going to make it much easier to exercise. It's going to make you much more energized, much more likely to actually be motivated to exercise. It can actually give you a better impact or better effects if you are exercising. But the flip side is exercising alone can help to improve hormones. It can help
Mm,
to balance out levels in a way that will both help with the exercise specific side, but can literally help with every other aspect of you as a human being, from your mood to your sleep to how comfortable you are day by day. So it's really difficult to separate these two out and completely pull them apart. But I very much think that on top of the standard basics of always looking at diet, always looking at movement, always just trying to feed your body with the absolute basics that it needs, hormones can be that big piece that either is preventing you from getting the benefits from what you're already doing, or what I'm also seeing a good amount of the time is hormones. I mean, we're talking broadly, so thyroid hormone, sex hormones that we'll probably go over a little bit later in the chat, a variety of different hormones in the body, they can have huge impacts on how motivated you are, how able you are to actually get into that exercise, or how clear your brain is and how strong your cravings are that will greatly affect your dietary intake. So there's huge overlap. They very much weave in and out of each other. We can't entirely separate them to focus on one versus the other. But for the purpose of this chat, I love that we're diving into the hormones side because I like to assume that the dietary and that movement piece are always going to be front and center and at least a piece of the conversation because they really are such a foundational piece of health. But the hormone side is that invisible backdrop, the communications that happen in our body that really allow everything to work the way that it should, allow us to feel the way that we want to feel. And they can actually be a massive part of the motivation and the ability to do all of these other healthy things.
Yeah, so it's important to pay attention, like listen to your body if you see something that's not normal and, with your lifestyle, your diet, or medication that you're taking. And I want to ask you the next question. What are some misconceptions around hormones that are worth addressing?
Yeah, I love when I have people that come in that are prime cases for hormone therapy or that have issues that are very directly and very effectively addressed by hormones because it leads to conversations that really open doors. So, for example, many people believe that hormone therapies, and I'm talking about estrogen and progesterone especially, many people believe that these are the absolute last ditch effort, that we should avoid them as long as possible, that there's either huge risks or that they're not effective or both. And these are so far from the truth that we now have the medical standard, the gold standard treatment. If a woman comes in with hot flushes, with issues sleeping relating to hot flushes or night sweats, if that perimenopausal transition is uncomfortable, the current medical gold standard, the number one recommended treatment, and essentially the number one recommended starting place is hormone therapy. So
Hmm.
the perspective that this is something to be afraid of or that this is something that just doesn't work is really now outdated. And I don't think that means that everybody should just run and jump and get on them. It's not the message I'm trying to get across. But a big goal of mine is to balance the perspectives that are out there. Because right now, the average perspective, as far as I can tell from both the public and from much of the medical community, is that these are not something that we should be putting forward to people who need it, or these are not something that should be part of the conversation. They absolutely should be. And these are a very regular part of my practice. So I've seen very much life changing, massive improvements in how people feel and how people act and their level of comfort and their relationship satisfaction, so many parts of their life. So
Hmm.
other cases that is not appropriate or we don't have any effects, or in some cases we try something, it doesn't feel right and we stop because it just clearly wasn't the right direction. So there's always there's always more to talk about. There's always some nuance here, but I find a huge misconception is that these are something to be avoided or that they're somehow dependence forming, that they're somehow addictive. That's simply not true. If we try it and it feels good for a month, for a year, for a few years, we continue. If it doesn't, we stop at any point along the way. And I think that we've overly complicated and put up more barriers between people who need some kind of support, whether it's direct hormone therapy, whether it be focusing on the lifestyle factors that affect hormones, literally anything around this side. I find there's a really strange um, misconception about how they can help or not, and it seems to be a little bit more negative than it should be for how helpful I've seen it be in clinical practice.
Yes, I mean, great information. And each person is different. So the results are going to be different time, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. If somebody is under 60 years of age and within, say, 10 years of menopause, so meaning if her menstrual cycle has stopped and she's within 10 years of that and less than 60 years of age, very likely there is a significant potential benefit to some kind of hormonal support. And this is just in my clinic and the people that I'm seeing more and more of, this is a really significant part of the population. But
Mhm.
yes, there are some people that this isn't something we should even look at. There are some people that it's absolutely inappropriate or that it really shouldn't be the starting place. We want to look at all factors, and the same with anything. If our body is not making enough of a hormone or is not going through a process in a way that is appropriate or that feels good for our body, there's very often more than one factor. So again, I don't want to funnel all this into saying hormones are the answer to every last thing, but it is truly surprising to me. It's quite shocking to me
Mm.
how often the missing pieces in getting there or in making changes or in feeling the way we want to feel come down to this topic.
Yes, I mean, hormone therapy is sometimes, people may think it's dangerous and other feel it's beneficial or that they really need it, right, for that optimum health. What do you think, and why is there such controversy around that?
Yeah, and there is a lot. There currently today, there really is a lot. And I don't think it needs to be there anymore. I think the short answer is there's outdated information that's floating around that most of the time is based on information that wasn't accurate in the first place. So we did a massive study in the early 90s. I think it was 1991 or two, or it was really early 90s. This was a long time ago, and it's called the Women's Health Initiative. A massive study where we looked at women, we looked at some of the changes around peri postmenopause, we looked at some of the effects of hormone therapy, especially. So the findings from that, before they were appropriately released by the people who actually did the study, by the people who understand the findings of the study, before they were really deeply before the details had really been understood well enough to broadcast to the public, other groups got a hold of this information, essentially broadcasted it. As I understand, there is a media source that just saw an opportunity to get information out quickly before understanding the information, put it out in a much more negative light, and basically induced a lot more fear than ever should have been there from the original studies anyway.
Mm.
That information, literally since the early 90s, has completely changed the scope and span of hormone usage, of hormone supports across the board. So went from before that probably being a little bit too cowboy-esque and giving to everybody. The percentage of people that were on it were just massive before this point. After this point, it completely dropped off. So the pendulum swung too far the other way. And I think we're still in that pendulum swing where we're still on the overly cautious, overly worried side, not truly comparing the risks and benefits as we have in the evidence in front of us. So a lot of what I speak from, when you talk about it, comes from my personal experience with the patients that I see, because this really is a very common. I have very common have people coming in who want to be better at their sport. They want to sleep better. They want to be healthier. They want to live as long as they can. And I see a growing number of people that are having significant challenges with hot flushes, with new sleep disturbances, with new mood disturbances that are very often in that time period. I mean, the more I look for this, the more I keep my eyes open and ears to the ground for my patients, the more it really estrogen and progesterone alone, which is only a piece of the puzzle, really are a shockingly big piece of how we can have people feel better. There is tons of newer research and ongoing research showing that we have over exaggerated the downsides. In almost all cases, we've under exaggerated the benefits. So, for example, joint pains can be hormone related, directly estrogen, progesterone. Levels of inflammation in the body and new diagnoses, like potentially new autoimmune diagnoses or new autoimmune flares, can be related to these hormone changes. Level of comfort, motivation, brain clarity can all be related to hormone changes. So this isn't just women. I mean, again, a lot of the research and a lot of the understanding is here, but if you're trying to be your best, trying to feel your best, and something isn't quite working, I think this is a very important focal point, both by the research and by what I've seen in clinical practice, that this may absolutely change the level of effort needed to achieve your goals. In some cases, this might do nothing at all. I don't think we should just dive into it for everyone, but on average, I think having hormones, hormone therapies, and the idea of hormone assessments and getting a sense as to what's working and not working in your body, I think that's absolutely something that I would love to see more of in our world.
Mm. Dr. MacMillan, any resources that you can suggest?
Um, Dr. Mary Claire is, to the best of my knowledge, is right now probably one of the loudest voices on this topic. Dr. Mary Claire Haver. She's a medical doctor based out of the US. Her book, The New Menopause, I went through the Audible version of it, as I do most of my books. I'm on the road quite often, so fantastic book. Really good overview of the current evidence of some of these misconceptions. Some of what you talked about today actually is there's a lot of overlapping in that book. It goes on and on and on and on about different potential concerns that can come up with a woman's life cycle and different parts around that perimenopause and after that just otherwise aren't really well addressed. So, to my knowledge, that is the single best resource I've seen. Honestly, kudos to her. That was a pretty phenomenally put together book.
Yes.
There was an interview done with her on the Huberman podcast that I think it was just over 2 hours long that I went through as well. Another good source of info that's, again, very direct, very, very honest, and very, very balancing to the arguments that are out there. Not saying that every single person should be on these kinds of supports or should be directly going into um, this way of seeing the world and the way of seeing the body, but pointing out ideas like, if we support women's hormones around that peri postmenopause time, we can actually extend lifespan in many cases by a couple of years. We can decrease the amount of new diagnoses. We can really support people to take a big step toward the major goals we have of living how you want, of doing what you want, and having that happy, healthy life for as much of your life as you can. So, yeah, it's unusual for my resources to point at one person, but in this case, yeah, the Huberman podcast with her and her book were both truly fantastic, and I think there would be a huge balancing force in the world to get some of that information forward.
Oh, wonderful. And people who want to reach out to you, Dr. MacMillan, where can they go?
Yeah, my personal website is drlucasmac.com. That's a number of my original information articles are put there. I'm slowly trying to add some of the interviews and some more basically content there. The clinic website is delbrookintegrative.com. We're at the Delbrook Integrated Medical Centre. Slowly expanding the team and bringing on more information, slowly adding more information, blog posts and articles to the actual clinic website as well. So both of those are good sources of info if you want to learn more. And of course, podcasts like these, I mean, trying to get the word out any way we can. So it's, yeah, thank you for making it possible and giving me another outlet to get that information out to as many people as we can.
Thank you, Dr. MacMillan, for being on the show. And for those listening, we talked about hormonal harmony, debunking myths, and boosting athletic performance. And I'd love for you to come back, Dr. MacMillan.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I have no doubt you'll see me here again at some point. I enjoy our chats as always, and thanks again for having me on the show.
Thank you.